Hello, my butt-kicking buddies. It's Silent Signs from I Dream of Indie, and today we are taking a look at Kao the Kangaroo. Now, Silent Signs, you might be thinking, isn't that a game that came out in the year 2000 on the Sega Dreamcast? And to be fair, yeah, you're right, it did, but this is actually a brand new platformer, which essentially serves to reboot this franchise that I, quite frankly, never heard of. I've said it before and I will say it again, I never owned a single Sega console until much later in my adult life, so I missed out on a lot of things, yeah, and this is one of them. There were a few other Kao the Kangaroo titles that came out in the early 2000s, such as Kao the Kangaroo, which was a Game Boy Advance title, Kao the Kangaroo Round 2, which now that I look at the game artwork looks very familiar, and I now distinctly remember thinking that it was just a Crash Bandicoot knockoff, but long story short, there hasn't been a Kao the Kangaroo game since 2005, that is, until now. So what can you expect from my now second favorite kangaroo in boxing gloves, first being Roger from Tekken, obviously? Well, Kao the Kangaroo is a 3D platformer where you are playing as the titular character, who in this particular adventure is looking for his lost sister, as well as trying to find out what happened to his long-lost father. And now that I think about it, this kangaroo family has lost a lot of limbs from the family tree, and I'm starting to kind of wonder about their involvement. I'm not making any accusations, but how many times can lightning strike in the same spot before you start to wonder? I am mostly kidding, but that is what brings us to Kao's grand adventure when he dons these magic boxing gloves from his father and sets out to confront a bunch of famous fighting masters that also seem to be influenced by a dark power. This story is pretty standard fare for a platformer, I would say, especially of the early 2000s era, which is where I feel right at home. It reminds me of the classics like Spyro the Dragon and Crash Bandicoot. It's so over the top and silly that it just totally works in this environment. And I know you probably didn't come to this review to hear my analysis of the plot. That's the English major in me. I'll set her aside and let's jump into gameplay. Do you see what I did there? It's jump because it's a kangaroo. Alright. Well, as you would probably expect from a kangaroo wearing boxing gloves, your primary moves are going to be a jump and double jump and punches. You do have a ground pound of sorts, which is very reminiscent of our pal Crash Bandicoot. There are actually a lot of elements in this game that remind me of our other furry mascot friend, such as chase levels where you are running towards the screen with something rolling after you. There are also levels where you have to hang off of this netting by your ears, which, okay, the ears part is kind of weird, but it definitely looks like a few levels I distinctly remember in Crash Bandicoot. That is until this lovable weirdo somehow stretches his neck downwards to reach coins and boxes. I think I'm going to have nightmares about this for a while. Thanks. Parallels and weird neck stretching aside, the game is broken up into a few distinct worlds that have an overarching theme. For example, there is one world that has kind of a frozen tundra theme. And of course, you have your world with a energy drink manufacturing theme. You know, standard platforming fare. These worlds are then broken up into various levels that you can enter by collecting runes. These runes are not particularly hard to come by. You can find them in the overworlds as well as within the levels themselves. And then, of course, at the end of each world, you will have to face off against a boss. In addition to runes, you will also be collecting gems and coins. Coins are the currency used to purchase accessories and new looks for Kao. They can also be used to purchase extra lives as well as heart fragments, 4 of which will add an additional heart to your health bar. If you want to save up for the latest greatest outfits and don't want to waste your money on hearts and lives, fear not, you can also find those within the levels. Self-expression is important after all. And if you really like exploration and collectibles, there are some hidden letters you can find. Guess which ones? Okay, yeah, you're right. It's KO. You can find KO within the levels. There are also collectible scrolls, or if you are a person that loves a good challenge, there are challenge wells where you have to collect as many items as possible, kind of like a bonus room. KO does gain some new abilities the further that you progress, and you learn about these things from little crabs holding signs, which I found super exciting for some reason. Now, the tiny crabs holding signs may have had something to do with it, but they are not the only reason that I had a great time playing KO. I found myself having a blast and not wanting to stop playing this title, and a lot of that can be attributed to the really smooth feeling platforming. This feels exactly like I want a late 90s, early 2000s platformer to feel. It's how I remember them playing, even though going back they probably don't play this well. The jumping and combat are the two things that I think this game did the best. The jumps don't feel too heavy or too floaty, and the combat is very forgiving. This is a game that a beginner or a novice could pick up and play successfully, but it's also a game that someone like me who played through all the early platformers can pick up and enjoy. Now, this isn't a perfect game. Sometimes the cameras are a little bit wonky and get hung up at various angles, and of course the story is a little bit derivative of those titles I've already mentioned about 50 times in this review. Am I going to remember the story 5 years from now when I'm thinking about this game? No. But am I going to remember how much fun I had playing it? Yeah. Graphically, Kao the Kangaroo creates a really vivid and vibrant cartoon world that is just so inviting to explore. I loved that you could use the coins you earned to purchase accessories and new looks for Kao to keep things fresh. It definitely looks leaps and bounds better than the original Kao the Kangaroo title. Sorry, more kangaroo jokes. During gameplay, it ran incredibly smoothly for the most part. There are those hiccups here and there with the camera angles, and sometimes I would pick up an item and Kao would make a gesture like he was trying to have some sort of triumphant celebration, but no sound effect would come, and it just made it feel uncomfortable and weird. There is definitely some noticeable awkwardness in some of the cutscenes and animations and transitions, which adds this layer of discomfort. It's not game breaking, it didn't take away from my enjoyment of the game, it just feels weird and out of place. I did have a similar feeling about the voice acting. This is a title that's supposed to be taking place in Australia, if I'm understanding correctly, and these characters don't necessarily sound Australian, which doesn't quite sound right. Takes you out of it a little bit. I mean, let's be real, we're playing as a kangaroo wearing magic boxing gloves and fighting various creatures, jumping over lava. It's not exactly the most believable title to begin with, but for some reason, it's the voices that really did it for me. I do appreciate that there is full voice acting, and I can see how a lot of work went into making that a possibility for this game and really bringing that story to life. Just didn't quite work for me. The music, on the other hand, is freaking fantastic. It's whimsical and lighthearted and fun and bright. It wouldn't sound out of place in, say, I don't know, a Crash Bandicoot game or perhaps a Spyro the Dragon game. It feels right at home with those titles, and I'd say it measures up quite well, especially when combined with the satisfying sound effects that, when they work really well. Again, Kao the Kangaroo, not a perfect title, but one that packs a lot of punch for those who enjoy platformers, particularly 3D platformers of the early 2000s or late 90s. It's bright, it's nostalgic, it's fun, and it brought a smile to my face.
I think Kaya's in trouble.
Did you have another nightmare, Kao?
It was more than that. It was like Kaya was trying to tell me something. Maybe she knows what happened to Dad. I have to help her. Please don't try to stop me, Mom.
Don't worry, I won't.
Thank you so much for supporting clickbait-free content here at I Dream of Indie. We would now like to take a moment to shout out our brave indie warriors and legends that help make this channel possible. At the Indie Warriors tier, we have Bill, Christian Cruz, Adriana Amato, CJR, PSC, Julian Colbus, Jesse, Ray Lynn, Marky Mint, Dave Hart, Peekaboo, Lex Noyle, Strick9, and Chic Geek. At the Indie Legends tier, we have Jen Rose, Larkison, Mitchell Hall, Peach, Skeptism, C. Coyle, Nathan Moore, Chris Jackson, Mr. W, Blue Francis 14, The Beefarinis, Business Cody, Carmen Red, Jace Glover, King of the Hatch, and Ophidian Mind. Thank you so much for everything that you do for independent developers, publishers, and for I Dream of Indie. Head on down to the description box below. Let's defeat the gaming echo chamber and bring a voice to the voiceless ones in gaming.